Big Finish have been keeping the Torchwood train running with a series of monthly adventures which have spanned several years now, spearheaded by James Goss, who is the equivalent of like the showrunner. I've reviewed a couple of these on stream when they've got a Doctor Who connection. For example, this one, Empire of Shadows, The Red List, and Death in Venice. Basically, whenever they've got a Doctor Who connection, I review them on stream. But now that Big Finish very kindly supply me with review copies, I can now cover the Torchwood monthly range proper in these live streams, starting with their first release in January 2023, which is a two-parter, double part 1 and double part 2 released this month, written by Guy Adams and starring Louise Jameson. Now, Louise Jameson is not playing Leela in the set. She's actually playing a Torchwood agent in the 1970s. She's playing Roberta Craven, who is this jaded agent of Torchwood. She's got hyper-awareness and she's neurodivergent. She's hearing hallucinations in her head from her deceased partner, who she blames for the death of in the line of duty working with Torchwood. But she also has to contend with an Auton invasion in the 1970s, where they are trying to infiltrate the government and trying to get access to the North Sea because of their oil production, because you need oil in order to make plastics, and plastics are what the Nestene consciousness wants everything to revolve around. You've got these scenes between Roberta and her partner, Patty, played by Emma Lowndes, where she has these full-blown conversations with her, even though Patty died several years ago in the line of duty. But these are where you get some of the best scenes in Double, where you've got Roberta, who is just completely stifled by the lifestyle. She's become jaded because of the events of Torchwood, and also her hyper-awareness means that everything is always so loud around her and she's able to notice all of the details, and everything in her mind moves so fast, even though the world around her moves so slowly. Let's play a clip from Double.
Well, yes, because the head of Ossam is lying dead and their closest competitor is swooping in to own all their assets. The only reason you do that, even if we decide to be trusting and assume Green's death is unrelated, which I don't, is because money is about to flow.
And money flows from oil.
Exactly. The future's looking bright for Nessile. Maybe I should be sat outside their managing director's house. I wonder if he's gone to the effort of living opposite a posh wine bar.
Is this really our business?
Where David McLean chooses to live? Probably not. David McLean. What's the opposite of nominative determinism?
You know what I mean. Is this really Torchwood business?
In this office, Torchwood business is whatever I say it is, and I am bored with chasing lights in the sky. I'm bored with salvaging technology I don't understand. I am bored with field reports that contain more questions than answers. Time to bring things back to basics. Best I felt all day. Where's an alien I can get in a bar brawl with?
So Double is a release where I really, really like the title of it, because of course it's not just a play on words and the fact that you have Auton doubles, but you know, it's an espionage, Torchwood, CIA story crossover, British intelligence, double agents, etc. And it's also a two-part story, a double release, so to speak. So it's a series of stories. It's a two-parter for all intents and purposes, releases at 69 and 70 of the Torchwood monthly range, where it's basically a series of very well-written, elaborate conversations by Guy Adams, where it's basically bolstered by an incredible lead performance by Louise Jameson. I think that Roberta Craven is the type of character where you've heard this type of character before, this sort of hyper-capable but very jaded, socially difficult to work with person who has just become like so... it was become so damaged by the world around her and the work that she's had to do for Torchwood in the 1970s and before that, of course. And I think that it is kind of like a stock been there, done that type of character, but played by Louise Jameson, giving it her absolute all here and a wonderful powerhouse performance. It gives the story a new lease on life. But the actual conversation sequences that Guy Adams has written are really great vignettes, some really, really powerful like mini performances. I think the actual whole of these two stories, this is two-parter, it doesn't add up to an incredibly compelling whole, but all of the individual components are really wonderfully assembled. Like I said, I think that the dialogue is absolutely sparkling. I think Guy Adams has done a great job with the characterization and making each person feel really distinct and making them clash with Roberta in really great, interesting ways. I think that I would say just maybe listen to Double Part 2, because that's where the most interesting plot specific stuff happens, but there's too much setup in Double Part 1 for you to properly ignore it. Double Part 2 has some really great dark Auton body horror set pieces, which were really harrowing to listen to. And I also think that the directions that the story goes in, while really, really predictable as to what is happening with Roberta, I think that Double, the title, has a really great third meaning in my mind, where it's two stories that you need to listen to twice. Because once you know the ending is, like, I predicted the ending from basically scene 1, but when I listened to Double Part 2 and had those suspicions confirmed, I listened to the two stories again, and I was able to view it from a brand new perspective once I had that information verified, and knowing exactly what was happening and what Roberta's thought process was and these secrets that she was hiding. I think that Double, it might not be worth spending money on two sets for, but it is still a satisfying story overall, if that makes sense. I think because you have to like buy two of these things, it might not be worth the price of admission for the complete story, because two stories for 20 quid, you are asking for quite a bit there. I don't think it's the best value for money. Maybe once these go on sale, they might be worth picking up, but they are still a satisfying whole. It is just a bit of a slowly paced two-part story spread across two separate releases. If this was maybe just 1 hour and a half release, I'd almost fully recommend it, because it's also a really good Auton story as well. And I think the use of the 1970s, you can tell by the artwork here as well, that they are taking inspiration from the 1970s Auton stories with the Third Doctor, including but not limited to the same sound effects and the same music cues, which I thought was a great commitment to the bit, great commitment to the aesthetics of the 1970s and those Auton stories. That stuff was great. I don't think the political intrigue subplot was that interesting, but it's driven by the characters, and when they're performed so outstandingly well, especially by Louise Jameson leading the charge, it's a great listen. I just don't know if it's worth the spending of two separate releases in order to get it. That's the only sort of that's the sort of only qualifier that I'd put on recommending Torchwood Double. There's some great espionage moments. Like I said, I'm just not sure if it adds up to an incredibly compelling whole, but I will admit, once I had the ending twist and everything verified for me, I did listen to it again, and I did get a lot out of it. So maybe if you're somebody who likes to really pick apart the details and listen to releases like this multiple times, it might be worth the investment in both time and money. If you're somebody who follows the Torchwood monthly range regularly, because I do understand that it has a committed fan base who do check out all of these releases, then yeah, it's an easy recommendation and you probably have already listened to it. But if you're somebody who would want to maybe dive into a Torchwood adventure, this isn't the first one that I'd recommend. I think once you've got a few Torchwood releases under your belt and you know what this range is kind of going for, then I'd recommend picking up Double as a two-parter, or maybe wait a few months or a year or so before this goes on sale, and then you can pick them up at a reduced price. But what I do like about these Torchwood monthly ranges is that, yeah, you do every so often have an adventure with Susie Costello, or with Yanto and Tosh, etc., and also Colchester, who's an original character for these ranges. But you do also get something a bit more experimental, adventures with Queen Victoria, adventures with Billis Manger, adventures with Tom Price, stuff like that. I'm glad that they are continuing to be experimental, and also, despite this range being several years old and up to release 69 and 70, that they're still introducing new characters like Roberta and new time periods for Torchwood to world building in the 1970s in London, and I think that's really, really cool. If you're somebody who is invested in the Torchwood range, I'd say pick up Double. Torchwood Double, Part 1 and Part 2, had some great moments and character work throughout the two releases. I'm just not entirely sure if it needed to be two releases. I think if this had just been maybe one 90-minute adventure at maybe just a slightly increased price point, that it would be a lot easier to recommend. But for two separate releases, I do have a bit of pause about recommending it. But personally, I had a really good time. There were some really good moments overall that I will remember. And like I said, I found a second listen to both of these stories to be really, really rewarding.